I'll never forget the sight that greeted me as my limousine rounded the corner into Oakwood Heights. My 67-year-old Uncle Raymond, the man who had raised me after my parents died, handcuffed to a massive oak tree like a common criminal. His weathered face was flushed with humiliation as Candace Pemberton, the self-appointed queen of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association, stood over him with a look of disgust that would have withered a lesser man. "People like you don't belong in Oakwood Heights," she was shouting, her manicured finger jabbing the air inches from his face. "This is private property. You can tell whatever employer sent you that we don't appreciate trespassers casing our homes." Wow. Have you ever experienced that moment when time seems to slow down? When rage builds so precisely that it transcends into perfect, crystalline clarity? That's what happened to me as I watched this woman, this stranger, humiliate the man who had taught me everything about integrity, hard work, and respect. The irony was almost too perfect. Uncle Raymond, handcuffed to a tree on property that I now owned, property that, along with most of Oakwood Heights, I had quietly purchased through a shell corporation 2 months earlier. Let me back up a bit. My name is Alexander Lex Montgomery. 12 years ago, I founded Crestwave Technologies from my college dorm room. What began as an algorithm to optimize supply chain logistics grew into a billion-dollar company that revolutionized how global commerce functions. Last year, Forbes put me on their cover as the supply chain savant. I was 35 years old and worth more than the GDP of several small nations. But none of that would have happened without Uncle Raymond. After my parents' car accident when I was 15, Ray took me in without hesitation. A master plumber by trade, he worked 60-hour weeks to make sure I could stay in our school district and pursue my education. He drove a 20-year-old pickup truck so he could pay for my college application fees. He attended every science fair, every graduation, and later, every company milestone, always wearing the same worn leather jacket, always with the same proud smile. When I decided to move back to our home state after years in Silicon Valley, I wanted to surprise Uncle Ray. I secretly purchased the grandest estate in Oakwood Heights, the most exclusive gated community in the region, plus several surrounding properties, and even the development company that owned the land, all through discreet holding companies, all without my name attached. I wanted to reveal everything at once and offer Ray his own house in the community, a well-deserved retirement just down the street from me. I'd arranged for Ray to inspect my new home's plumbing before the big reveal, telling him only that I was considering buying the property and needed his expert opinion. He arrived a few hours before I was scheduled to meet him there. What I hadn't counted on was Candace Pemberton. From what I've since learned, Candace had ruled Oakwood Heights with meticulously manicured iron fists for the past decade. As both HOA president and owner of Pemberton Luxury Real Estate, she wielded her power like a blunt instrument. The right kind of residents, wealthy, preferably white, appropriately deferential to her authority, received warm welcomes and overlooked infractions. The wrong kind, basically everyone else, faced her particular brand of enforcement. Her husband, Stanley Pemberton, was a cardiac surgeon who spent more time at the hospital than at home, leaving Candace with abundant free time to micromanage the community. Her daily inspections were legendary, driving slowly through the neighborhood in her white Range Rover, iPad in hand, documenting every weed, every improperly positioned garbage can, every unapproved wind chime. The first time Candace won HOA president, it was a legitimate election. The subsequent 5 terms involved strategic scheduling of meetings when certain homeowners were traveling, last-minute venue changes, and bylaw amendments that made it nearly impossible for working residents to participate in governance. The result was a board composed entirely of Candace's Bridge Club friends and society connections, all rubber-stamping her increasingly draconian community standards. Apparently, a 67-year-old man in worn work clothes driving a plumbing van definitely qualified as the wrong kind in Candace's worldview. Which brings us back to the oak tree and the handcuffs. As my limo pulled to a stop at the curb, I could see Bernard Wilson, the community's head of security, standing off to the side looking uncomfortable. Bernard, I would later learn, was a former police officer who had been dismissed from the force for excessive force complaints, only to find a welcoming home in Candace's private fiefdom. He was the one who had actually placed the handcuffs on my uncle. "I've already called the police," Candace was saying as I stepped out of the limousine. "Breaking and entering is a felony in this state." "I told you," my uncle replied with remarkable patience. "I have the key. I'm here with the homeowner's permission to inspect the plumbing." "A likely story. We know the owner is a tech executive from California. He wouldn't associate with—" She paused, looking him up and down. "Your type." That's when I cleared my throat. The small crowd that had gathered, mostly landscapers and housekeepers, with a few curious residents watching from a safe distance, parted as I approached. Behind me followed Evelyn Shaw, my chief legal counsel, and Marcus Bailey, my head of security. Both carried briefcases. Neither smiled. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, "he would, and he does." Candace turned, her expression shifting from righteous indignation to calculated charm as she took in my tailored Brioni suit and the luxury vehicle behind me. "Sir, I apologize for the disturbance," she said, adopting what I imagined she thought was a welcoming smile. "We're just dealing with a trespasser. Security has it under control." "That trespasser," I replied, walking past her to approach my uncle, "is Raymond Montgomery, my uncle, who raised me after my parents died, who put me through college, who apparently needs to be rescued from being forcibly restrained on property that I own. Let us know where you're watching from today, and if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community." The color drained from Candace's face so quickly I was momentarily concerned she might faint. Bernard, perhaps sensing which way the wind was blowing, immediately moved toward Uncle Ray with keys in hand. "Sir, there's been a terrible misunderstanding," he stammered, fumbling with the handcuffs. "We had no idea—" "That he was related to me?" I finished for him. "Or that your actions constitute false imprisonment, a felony in this state? Or perhaps you were unaware that handcuffing someone to a tree on private property without legal authority might expose you to significant personal liability." Evelyn stepped forward, opening her briefcase to remove a folder. "Mr. Wilson, I'm Evelyn Shaw, Chief Counsel for Crestwave Technologies and Mr. Montgomery personally. I'll need your full name, badge number if you have one, and confirmation of your employment status for the lawsuit we'll be filing tomorrow morning." Bernard's face went ashen. "Ma'am, I was just following HOA protocols for unauthorized visitors." "Handcuffing people to trees is in your written protocol?" Evelyn asked, her pen poised above her legal pad. "I'd very much like to see that document." Meanwhile, I had reached my uncle, who was now free from the handcuffs and rubbing his wrists. "You okay, Ray?" I asked quietly. He nodded, his dignity returning now that he was free. "Takes more than this to rattle me, Lex." Then he added with a twinkle in his eye, "Though I gotta say, your timing is impeccable, just like when you showed up at my retirement party with that fishing boat." I squeezed his shoulder, then turned back to face Candace, who was attempting to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Montgomery, again, I deeply apologize for this unfortunate incident. Had we known you were the new owner, you'd have treated my uncle with respect?" I interrupted. "Because that's the issue here, Ms. Pemberton. Not that you failed to recognize me or my connection to him, but that you believe it's acceptable to handcuff someone to a tree for the crime of not looking like they belong in your community." By now, more residents had emerged from their homes, sensing drama unfolding. I noticed several household staff members watching with barely concealed satisfaction as Candace squirmed. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Candace suggested, gesturing toward the clubhouse. "As HOA president, I can assure you—" "As HOA president," I cut in, "you should be horrified that this happened on your watch. And as an owner of property in this community, I'm entitled to invite whoever I wish onto my property without them being accosted." Marcus Bailey, my head of security, a former Army Ranger with a perpetually impassive expression, chose this moment to step forward. "Sir, do you want me to contact the actual police about the false imprisonment?" Before I could answer, a woman's voice called out from the growing crowd. It's not just his uncle. Heads turned to see a middle-aged black woman in a tennis outfit step forward. I'm Dr. Elaine Washington from 47 Oak Terrace. My husband and I moved in 3 months ago, and security stopped me from entering the community gym because they didn't believe I lived here. I had to wait outside in the rain until my husband arrived to verify my residency. This seemed to break a dam of silence. Suddenly, others began to speak up. They threatened to tow my son's car because it was too old for visitor parking, called an elderly man. My housekeeper was followed by security every time she walked from the bus stop to my house until I complained, added another resident. They removed my Diwali decorations but left up Christmas lights that were up for months, came another voice. A young woman in chef's whites stepped forward nervously. I've worked as a personal chef for the Hendersons for 3 years. Security searches my bag every time I enter, but they wave through the white gardeners without stopping them. With each new story, Candace's expression shifted from defensive to calculating to increasingly desperate. I could almost see her mind working, trying to find a way to regain control of the narrative. These are all isolated incidents that, she began, that form a pattern, I finished for her. A pattern that suggests this community has been run less like a neighborhood and more like a private social club with discriminatory membership practices. Candace's face cycled through expressions, shock, outrage, and finally a calculated defensiveness. These are isolated incidents that— Ms. Pemberton, I interrupted firmly. I think we've heard enough. As of this moment, I'm calling for an emergency meeting of all Oakwood Heights residents to be held tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. on my property. I gestured to the mansion behind us. I'll be addressing some significant changes to how this community operates going forward. Her eyes narrowed. You can't just call a meeting without board approval. There are bylaws, procedures. Actually, Evelyn interjected smoothly, opening another folder. As the owner of Crestline Development Group, which holds controlling interest in Oakwood Heights Master Properties LLC, Mr. Montgomery has the authority to call such a meeting. Perhaps you weren't aware that your development company was acquired 2 months ago. The look of shock on Candace's face was priceless. The development company had been privately held by an investment group for years, managing Oakwood Heights and several other luxury communities in the region. My acquisition had been done quietly through multiple layers of corporations, specifically to avoid alerting residents until I was ready to implement changes. That's impossible, Candace whispered. The board would have been notified. The board was notified, Evelyn replied, handing her a document. This letter was sent to all board members 6 weeks ago. Perhaps it didn't make it onto the agenda? I had a pretty good idea why the notification never reached other board members. Candace, who controlled all HOA communications, would have recognized the potential threat to her authority and buried it. She'd likely assumed she could handle the new corporate owner just as she'd managed the previous one, through selective information sharing and strategic relationship management. She hadn't counted on that owner being me, or on me witnessing her true colors firsthand. As Candace stared at the letter in disbelief, I turned back to my uncle. Ray, I wanted this to be a surprise, but not like this. The house down the street, the one with the blue door you've always said you liked, it's yours if you want it. Part of your retirement package as the new facilities director for Oakwood Heights. Ray's eyes widened. Facilities director? Lex, I'm retired. Semi-retired, I corrected with a smile. 4 hours a day, excellent salary, full benefits. The community needs someone who actually knows what they're doing instead of just hiring the lowest bidder for repairs, but only if you want it. Uncle Ray looked around at the community, then back at me. I could see him weighing the offer, his practical nature assessing whether this was charity or a genuine need. The plumbing in the East Wing guest bathroom is a disaster waiting to happen, he said finally. Whoever installed that junction valve should be ashamed of themselves. I grinned, recognizing his acceptance in his own way. So you'll take the job? Someone's got to make sure these fancy houses don't float away in the next heavy rain, he replied with a wink. Before Candace could regather her composure, a sleek black Tesla pulled up, and a distinguished older woman in a smart business suit emerged. Am I late to the party? She asked, approaching our group. Right on time, I replied, turning to the gathered crowd. Everyone, this is Judge Marina Cortez, retired from the State Supreme Court, and now my special advisor on community governance. She'll be helping us draft new HOA bylaws that focus on actual community well-being rather than arbitrary enforcement. Judge Cortez nodded to the crowd, then fixed Candace with a look that had probably made countless attorneys quake in her courtroom. Ms. Pemberton, I believe. I've reviewed your HOA documentation. We have a lot to discuss. Candace looked like she might actually be ill. I've done nothing wrong, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. Everything I've done has been to maintain property values and community standards. Is that why the HOA has spent $347,000 on legal fees in the past 3 years fighting discrimination complaints? Judge Cortez asked mildly. Or why there's a pattern of selective enforcement documented in the complaint log? Or perhaps why the annual landscaping contract has gone to your brother-in-law's company for the past decade despite consistently higher bids than competitors? The crowd murmured in shock. These were apparently details that had not been shared at regular HOA meetings. I think, I said, placing a gentle hand on Uncle Ray's shoulder, that this community is overdue for some transparency and change. Now, if you'll excuse us, my uncle and I have some catching up to do. We'll see everyone tomorrow evening for the meeting. As I guided Ray toward the mansion, I heard Marcus informing Bernard that his services would no longer be required, effective immediately, and that he should return any community property to the guardhouse before leaving. Inside the grand foyer of what was now my home, Ray finally let his composure slip. Lex, what in the world have you done? I smiled, loosening my tie. Remember when you taught me to fix that leaky pipe in our old apartment? You said sometimes you have to tear out the bad plumbing and start fresh. I was talking about copper pipes, not entire communities, he laughed, shaking his head in disbelief as he looked around the mansion. Same principle, I replied. Some systems are too broken to patch. Ray's face grew serious. Those handcuffs were a bit tight, left marks. He rolled up his sleeve to show red welts on his wrist. My jaw tightened. We'll add that to the lawsuit. No need, Ray said, rubbing his wrist. I've had worse injuries from stuck valves. Besides, seems to me that woman's going to face consequences enough without adding my sore wrists to the pile. That was Uncle Ray, always focused on moving forward rather than settling scores. It was one of the many lessons he'd taught me growing up, though I wasn't always as good at practicing it. At least let the doctor take a look, I insisted. I've got my personal physician coming to the house later today anyway. Ray rolled his eyes. Personal physician? Listen to you. Like some kind of royalty. Hey, you raised me to take care of my health, I countered. That's all I'm doing. And buying entire neighborhoods as a hobby, he added wryly. I couldn't help but laugh. No matter how successful I became, Uncle Ray would always see me as the skinny kid who couldn't quite figure out how to use a pipe wrench properly. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The emergency community meeting the next evening was standing room only. The grand ballroom of my new home, a space I hadn't even had time to furnish properly, was filled with curious and cautious residents. Some looked uncomfortable being in such proximity to their neighbors. Others seemed energized by the prospect of change. I noticed that people had naturally segregated themselves. Wealthy homeowners clustered near the front, household staff and service providers standing awkwardly at the back. That invisible line between us and them that Candace had enforced for years remained, even in her absence. Candace herself arrived exactly on time, flanked by 3 board members who looked both nervous and defiant. She had exchanged yesterday's tennis outfit for a formal blazer and pearls, battle armor for the confrontation ahead. Judge Cortez presented a detailed analysis of the HOA's financial and enforcement records, revealing patterns that shocked even the most disengaged homeowners. Selective enforcement against minority residents. Vendor contracts awarded to friends and family at inflated prices. Reserve funds used for emergency landscaping at board members' homes. In the past 5 years, Judge Cortez noted, homeowners of color have received 83% of all landscaping violations, despite making up only 27% of the community. Service workers have been reported to security at 14 times the rate of visitors arriving in luxury vehicles. And perhaps most troublingly, the HOA has spent nearly a quarter of its legal budget defending against discrimination claims that could have been avoided entirely with consistent rule enforcement. When she finished, I stepped forward. I didn't buy property in Oakwood Heights just to live here. I bought it to transform it. My company specializes in optimizing systems that have become inefficient and inequitable. Usually those are supply chains and logistics networks, but the principles are the same. I outlined my vision, a community governed transparently, where rules existed to enhance quality of life rather than control aesthetics, where cultural differences were celebrated rather than suppressed, where staff, from housekeepers to landscapers, were treated with dignity rather than suspicion. Some of you may be wondering why I care so much, I said toward the end. It's simple. I grew up in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other regardless of their income or background, where my uncle, a plumber, was just as respected as the doctor next door. I want Oakwood Heights to be exclusive because of its values, not despite them. Candace stood up, her voice tight with controlled anger. While Mr. Montgomery's intentions may be admirable, he fails to understand that maintaining certain standards is precisely what makes Oakwood Heights desirable. Our property values have increased by an average of 3.7% annually over the past decade, I interrupted, which is actually 1.2% below comparable communities with less restrictive covenants. I've done the analysis, Ms. Pemberton. The data doesn't support your approach. The vote to remove Candace and the entire board was nearly unanimous. The vote to adopt provisional new bylaws, drafted by Judge Cortez with input from a diverse committee of residents, was even more decisive. As people mingled afterward, enjoying catering from local restaurants representing the diverse backgrounds of our community, Uncle Ray approached with Dr. Washington and her husband. Lex, Elaine here has a fascinating proposal for the community center renovation. Did you know she's a leading architect specializing in accessible design? I smiled, watching my uncle in his element, connecting people, solving problems, building community. The same skills that had made him an excellent plumber made him perfect for his new role. Across the room, Candace Pemberton stood alone, her husband having left early with a terse comment about damage control. She looked smaller somehow. Her power evaporated in the face of transparency and accountability. As she moved to leave, I excused myself and approached her. Ms. Pemberton? She turned, chin raised defensively. Mr. Montgomery, I want to be clear about something, I said quietly. What happened yesterday with my uncle wasn't personal vengeance. It was a symptom of a system you helped create that judges people by appearances rather than character. That system changes now. These people, she replied, gesturing vaguely at the diverse crowd, don't understand what it takes to maintain a prestigious community. You'll see property values drop when standards slip. I smiled. I'm betting exactly the opposite. That diversity, inclusion, and genuine community will make this the most desirable address in the region. And unlike you, I'm putting my actual fortune behind that bet. Her eyes narrowed. You think you've won because you have money and power, but you're just another elitist imposing your values on others. At least I was honest about my standards. The difference, I replied, is that my standards apply equally to everyone, including myself. Your standards were just tools to maintain your position at the top of a very small hierarchy. Good evening, Ms. Pemberton. After she left, Uncle Ray found me on the terrace, gazing out at the community that now, in many ways, belonged to both of us. Quite a chess move you pulled, buying the whole development, he said, leaning against the railing beside me. I shrugged. I learned strategy from the best. Remember all those chess games we played when I was in high school? You always did think several moves ahead, he chuckled. But this is grandmaster level. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again, his voice softer. Your parents would be proud, you know, not of the money or the success, though that's impressive, but of the man you've become, the way you stand up for people. I felt a lump in my throat. I had a good teacher. He clasped my shoulder. So, about this house with the blue door. It's yours, no strings attached, I assured him. The job offer is separate, only if you want it. Ray smiled, looking out at the community spread before us. I think I do want it. Someone needs to make sure the plumbing in this place is up to code, especially after I saw what they did with the main line connection in your guest bathroom. Absolutely shameful workmanship. I laughed. Same old Ray. Always fixing what others had broken. 3 months later, Oakwood Heights had transformed. The gatehouse remained, but the guards were new, trained in customer service rather than intimidation. The community center had been renovated under Dr. Washington's direction to be fully accessible. The monthly cultural celebration in the park, this month featuring cuisine and music from the Rodriguez family's Dominican heritage, had become the most anticipated event on the calendar. Uncle Ray thrived in his role, assembling a maintenance team that reflected the diversity of skills needed to properly care for the community. He still drove his old pickup truck, but now it had Oakwood Heights Facilities Director painted on the side. His idea, not mine. Candace Pemberton sold her house at a loss and moved to another exclusive community across town. I heard through real estate channels that she was already campaigning for a position on their HOA board. As for me, I finally fully moved in, splitting my time between Oakwood Heights and my company headquarters. The decision to relocate Crestwave's research division to our state had created hundreds of new jobs, and I'd established a foundation to provide technical training for high school students from underserved communities, including the neighborhood where Uncle Ray and I had once lived. Sometimes I think about that day, seeing my uncle handcuffed to a tree, how 5 more minutes might have escalated to an arrest, charges, a system designed to humiliate and break him. How easily power can be abused when it's concentrated in the wrong hands. But I also think about how quickly things can change when people with resources and determination commit to making a difference. Not just in grand gestures like buying entire communities, but in daily decisions to treat others with dignity and respect. Uncle Ray still teases me about arriving in a limousine like some kind of movie star, but we both know the truth. The real power that day wasn't in the luxury car or the expensive suit, or even the corporate ownership. It was in refusing to accept that some people deserve to be handcuffed to trees while others get to make the rules. If you believe in justice and love seeing HOA Karens get what they deserve, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, HOA Revenge. We post gripping, real-life HOA dramas every day that you won't want to miss. Your support keeps us going. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next story.